In an earlier video, we looked at the line tool, but just used it to make a simple line, and we saw that what it was making was a rectangle with one of the dimensions specified by the weight of the line. We'll look at it more closely now. One of its key uses is to make arrows. Let's create a new drawing called Line Tool. Make sure the grid is enabled, add a new layer, and make sure the line tool is selected, and the line weight is 50 pixels, and the arrowheads are not enabled. Then draw a horizontal line near the top of the drawing. No big surprise, we've done this before. From the grid, you can see the height of the rectangle we've drawn is 50 pixels. Add another layer and enable the end arrowhead. Set the width of the arrowhead to 400%, which means it will be 4 times the weight of the line, or 200 pixels. Set the length of the arrowhead to 300%, that's 3 times the weight of the line, or 150 pixels. Set the concavity of the arrowhead to 50%. The concavity refers to the depth of the notches in the arrowhead. The way it is measured might not be obvious, but we'll see the details shortly. Draw a horizontal line below the other one. The arrowhead's width extends over 2 major divisions in the grid, so the width is, in fact, 200 pixels. The length of one of the arrowheads extends over 1.5 major divisions, 150 pixels, as expected. To see what the concavity is measuring, we'll add a blue line that goes from one of the arrowhead tips along its edge to the center of the stem of the arrow. The 50% refers to the length of the arrowhead, which is 150 pixels, so the concavity is 75 pixels. Concavity is measured from the tips of the blades of the arrowhead to where the blue line crosses the center of the stem of the arrow. The concavity can be from minus 50% to plus 50%. When it is negative, you get an arrowhead without notches. In the end, though, an arrowhead is some anchor points and handles, as all the other vector-based shapes in Photoshop are. So if you want to, adjust the handles on the arrow to give it a less angular look, because the arrow outline is just another path you can manipulate. There are a lot of custom shapes built into Photoshop. When the Custom Shape toolbar is selected, the drop-down on the right-hand side of the Shape toolbar gives access to them. In fact, by default, there are lots of different arrow shapes there. There is an arrow similar to the one we just drew, along with others like musical notes, and many more that can be loaded by clicking on the gear icon next to the drop-down. When you click on one of these, you are given the choice of either replacing the selections that are there or adding to them. Keep in mind that when you make a selection from the Shape drop-down, you are only selecting a path, and whatever settings are in the Shape toolbar will be used to fill and stroke the path. That's different than using a preset like the one we used to make a green concept rectangle. That includes not only the path, but also includes colors, kind of stroke, and so on. In fact, we just replaced all the shapes in the Shape dropdown, and the path we saved when we made our various versions of green concept rectangles is gone. But we can still use our green concept presets to draw a rounded corner rectangle. The path the preset needs is stored in the preset itself when you make that preset, so you don't need to worry about losing your presets when, for example, you overwrite them with the artistic texture shapes, as we have done here. All those green concept presets, we can save them and pass them around. To do that, pull down the Custom Shape icon, click on the little gear, and in the drop-down, select the Preset Manager. You will see presets for all the drawing tools, but scroll down till you find our green concept presets. Select the 3 kinds of green concept presets we've made, then press the Save Set button. That saves just the presets we've selected. Then name the set and save them through the File Save dialog. Now, just to show that that worked, pull down the Custom Tool icon, click on the little gear, then click on Reset Tools Presets. You can replace all the presets with the defaults that come with Photoshop by pressing OK, or just add them to whatever is there. Press OK and replace them all. Now our green concept presets are gone. Press on the little gear again and choose Load Tool Presets. Find the presets file we just saved, select it and press Load. Now we have our green concepts back. Let's drill into the vector drawing tools a bit more by using them to make a roundish arrowhead pointer, sort of in the style of the rounded corner rectangle we have been using for concepts. There are lots of shapes and presets like this built into Photoshop for your use. Why not just use one of them? In this course, the main reason for creating yet another arrowhead is to dig further into the vector tools. But sometimes it's satisfying and has more impact if you use shapes that are different than those everyone else has access to. In any case, let's make an arrowhead. We're going to use a technique that sometimes is used in real drawing with pen and pencil, making a figure out of simple shapes. In this case, we'll make our arrowhead using circles and rectangles. Let's get started. Create a new file named Pointer. We are going to carefully center our arrowhead in the drawing. You don't have to do this, but many other applications that use clip art, like Word or PowerPoint, do rotation around the center of whatever you give them. So carefully choosing what part of the shape is in the center of the canvas can be very helpful. In any case, we've made our canvas 1024 by 768, so its center is at 512/384. Let's add some guides that cross over there. Rather than just dragging a guide onto the canvas, use the application menu, View New Guide. Use the New Guide dialog to put a horizontal guide at 384 and then a vertical guide at 512. We're going to use the grid as a drawing aid, but we want its major divisions lined up on the center of the canvas. You do this by dragging the ruler centers to the center of the drawing. Now turn on the grid. Now use the ellipse tool and make sure the toolbar at the top is set up as it would be for a green concept. Use the ellipse tool to draw a 50 pixel diameter circle at the center of the canvas. 50 pixels is 2 minor divisions on the grid. This circle will be the tip of our arrowhead. The stroke for that circle is a bit thick in diameter, at least to my eye. Let's cut it back to 2 pixels. We want the stem for our arrowhead to be 100 pixels long with a rounded end. So let's add another 50 pixel circle for that. We want the circle to be on the same layer as the one we just drew, so set the path operation to combine before adding it. Next, we'll use the pen tool to make a rectangle to connect the two circles. Again, we want the path operation to be combined. We can use the stem of the arrow we've just drawn to make each of the arrow's blades. So duplicate the stem. Hide the original stem so it's easier to see what we'll be doing next. We need to remove the circle on the right end of the duplicate. We'll see why in just a second. Use the Path Selection tool to select just that circle and then delete it. Make the stem visible again and then select the blade. That shows the bounding box and grab handles for the blade. The reason for removing the circle from the arrowhead blade is because you can choose any grab handle as a point to rotate about. We want to rotate the blade out from the stem, but if the circle was still there, there wouldn't be a grab handle at the center of the tip of the arrowhead. Up on the Shape toolbar, select the grab handle at the middle of the right-hand side of the blade. Now, by hand, rotate out the blade until it looks about right. That looks good, at least to my eye, and the angle is about 35 degrees. We can get a better overall view by merging the stem and blade shapes together. Select the Move tool. That's about right, but the blade is a bit too long. We need to shorten it a little. To do that, we have to break things apart. Type Ctrl-Z. We need to go back to before we rotated the blade, and Ctrl-Z only toggles between the last change and what is current. However, by using Ctrl-Alt-Z, we can undo through all the changes that have been recorded. So undo once more. Select the Direct Select tool, then use it to make a marquee around the circle at the left end of the blade. Then use the right arrow key to adjust the overall length of the blade in just a few pixels. That looks about right now. Make sure the blade is selected, then up in the Shape toolbar, select the right middle grab handle of the blade and enter 35 degrees into the angle. Click on the check mark to set that change. Then merge the blade and stem together again. To me, that looks better. Now we need to duplicate that upper blade to have one for the lower part of the arrowhead, so undo the changes until the blade is back in line with the stem, then duplicate it. Now rotate one of the blades by 35 degrees and the other by -35 degrees, then merge together the two blades with the stem. That's a reasonable arrowhead, but it's a bit plain looking. There are a number of things we could do to gussy it up. We've already looked at the inner glow effect, so let's use that. For an inner glow on a white canvas, we use the Darken Blend mode, and we'll make the glow color green stroke. 25 pixels looks like a nice glow, but let's make it a center glow. If we change the overall application technique from soft to precise, we get a pretty snazzy delta wing glow inside the arrowhead. And to finish off, check anti-alias. One of the good things about using vector shapes is that they can be scaled without introducing those jagged edges and other visual artifacts that happen when bitmaps are scaled. As is, our current arrowhead is too large for use as, say, a pointer to focus your audience on a talking point in the slide presentation, as we've seen in the slides throughout this course. So let's make a smaller copy of this arrowhead. First, duplicate its layer and hide the original one so we won't be distracted by it. Then lock the width and height on the Transform toolbar at the top of the screen and reduce it to 35%. Click on the background so we can see the result. Two things jump out. The stroke is too thick for the arrowhead size, and our delta wing is kind of washed out. That's because Photoshop scales the path for the figure, but not the stroke width or any effects. Those we have to fix up by hand. Select the layer for the arrowhead and change the stroke size to 1 pixel. That looks better now. Now bring up the layer effect for the inner glow. The size of the inner glow is specified in pixels, and 25 is just too big. We've reduced the overall size of the arrowhead to about 1/3 of its original size, so let's do the same thing for the glow and set it to 8 pixels. There, now we have our delta wing back. And just for completeness, rename the names of the layers to reflect their content. Now that we've made this really nice delta wing arrow, what can we do with it? You could print it out and have it framed. It would make a better gift than a fruitcake. Sorry, I couldn't resist. That was just a joke. The most likely use for the delta wing is as clip art in some other program. Let's look at how to get it ready for use as clip art and then use it in a PowerPoint presentation. First of all, the image is just too big. All that white space is unnecessary and actually gets in the way, and we need a transparent background. We could trim the image down to just around the arrow itself, but that would cut off the big arrow we have in the other layer. The size of the image has to be the same for all layers. So we'll duplicate the small arrow into another drawing and trim it down there. Name the other drawing Pointer 35. Notice that once the duplication finishes, we are editing the Pointer 35 drawing. There is no background layer, but that's okay, we don't want one anyhow. Now you can automatically trim the image down by using the application menu Image Trim and trim off the top, bottom, right, and left of the image. Now the image is just big enough to hold the arrow. Save the arrow as a PSD file in case we want to do something else with it, like make arrows with other colors. You can't use a PSD file as clip art except in Adobe products, so save the arrow again as a PNG file. A PNG file is lossless and preserves the transparent background. Let's switch to creating a PowerPoint presentation. You can use pointer35.png like any other clip art. Notice that because it has a transparent background, you can place it on top of type or anything else, and it looks like it was just drawn there. But it's really made to focus the user's attention on a talking point, so put it next to one. Now, when we switch to slideshow mode, you can see how nicely it does that. The term shape gets overloaded a little in Photoshop. We saw when we were making a custom shape, we ended up saving a path that we later used to make a custom shape preset. Paths are not visible in the final image, but typically when we talk about a custom shape, we mean something that is visible in the final image, like a rounded rectangle. In any case, Photoshop lets us save and reuse a path, plus all the settings on the Custom Shape toolbar, so that we can reuse a visible shape in a drawing. All the vector shapes Photoshop creates are Bezier curves. You manipulate a Bezier curve by moving its anchor points and/or changing its handles. You can create a new shape from scratch by using the various vector drawing tools in Photoshop, or build one out of existing shapes. Things like curves in a custom shape can be problematic, but using a fixed size or defined proportions makes it more manageable. Non-uniform scaling of shapes that have curves can also be a problem, but carefully selecting and moving anchor points without changing their handles manages most of the issues you will run into there.